Rubbish. Bulky, broken, stinking, slimy, and maybe even recyclable.
Like most major cities, Sheffield produces vast amounts of rubbish each year. Around 210,000 tonnes of rubbish is produced by local authorities and households. That's enough rubbish to fill Ponds Forge International Swimming Pool 140 times.
And each person residing in Sheffield produces a grizzly bear's weight worth of waste each year. Imagine a grizzly bear's weight worth of rubbish following you around at the end of the year. And now imagine an additional grizzly bear for each year that you've lived in Sheffield.
Rubbish and our ability to dispose of and recycle it is a major concern for any big city. The way we think about rubbish and waste is changing, from being a stinking inconvenience to an environmental concern. New attitudes to reuse and recycling are at the forefront of this environmental shift.
Our rubbish can tell us how we are affecting the planet, but also it can give an insight as to who we are as people, what we eat, what we value, and what we throw away. Have you ever stopped to think about what your rubbish says about you? And perhaps now you're wondering, why is it that I'm in the University of Sheffield's archaeology labs? And what this rubbish and these precious artefacts have to do with each other? Simply put, archaeology is rubbish.
And it's this trashy connection we'll be exploring today as part of the Council for British Archaeology's Festival of Archaeology.
From trash to tip, rubbish can tell us about our past, present and our future.
So join us, Wessex Archaeology, as we ask, isn't archaeology rubbish? So how do archaeologists reveal the past?
Well, we can use things like micro-remains, so husked wheat, pollen, and even tiny insects to help us reconstruct past landscapes.
Exactly, and it's those past landscapes that help us get an idea of the people who lived in those landscapes and what we can learn about all the artefacts that they left behind.
So wait, are you talking about their rubbish?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, yeah, so one prehistoric man's rubbish could be an archaeologist's find of the week.
Exactly, and as we've often said, Jack, whilst digging in the pouring rain, archaeology, isn't it rubbish? So, as archaeologists, it's our job to sort of piece together those bits of rubbish and those clues about those past landscapes to try and get ideas about what who those people were in those cultures and the lives that they've lived.
So how do you do that?
Well, if you use the sort of metaphor of perhaps moving into a new house, and when you get the keys and you open the door and start having a look around, you find little things that have been left behind. Not like important things, just tiny things, like perhaps a discarded receipt for some tools, or a postcard that's sort of been forgotten and spawned behind a radiator. If we take an archaeological perspective, those things can become clues.
And it's those clues that tell us about those people. So with our messy home mover, we know that they like perhaps doing a bit of DIY and they like going on a holiday. But for our archaeologists, when we get those clues, it can give us indications about those, ancient cultures and the people that lived in them as well.
Brilliant. So, shall we put our gloves on and have a look at what you've laid out for me?
Absolutely. So all these clues will tell us about people, and the main difference between our messy home mover and the site we're looking at today is basically time.
Over here we've got quite a lot of broken things. What am I looking at, Emma?
Okay, so everything that we can see on this table, apart from that replica which we'll get back to, these are all examples of things you might find in a midden.
And what is a midden?
So a midden is basically a rubbish pit. So all these things could be something that someone in the past has thrown away or discarded, and that's what we'll be exploring today.
Oh, wonderful. So where should we start then?
How about with those pieces of pottery next to you?
These ones right in front of me. How convenient.
So what we're looking at is all Iron Age pottery in this section.
Can I pick it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Go for the big bit.
absolutely. So this is part of a large vessel, so it's possibly a cooking vessel. And we can see, yeah, that's it. So at the top you've got the rim, so you've got the top of the jar, and then we can get an idea that the vessel would have curved round and down, and they possibly used it to cook things in there. What's interesting about this Iron Age pottery is the way it's made, and also then the way it looks. So they're all quite similar, aren't they, these pieces? They've got these lovely kind of black hues to them, and then those rosy hues coming through as well. So there's very similar fabric types that we've got on the table. And they've also got all these big bits inside them. So these are what we call inclusions, and those inclusions in the pottery give us an idea of what type of fabric where it is. So and with this Iron Age stuff, this is a brilliant example of shellyware. We know it's shellyware due to kind of basically what it looks like and the inclusions inside. So all these little bits are potentially ground up pieces of pottery, so broken bits of pottery, or it's ground up pieces of shells sometimes as well. And that's to just basically help it fix together and be a better material. But if we compare it perhaps to the Roman stuff that Jack has over there.
Yeah, so sort of as we move a bit further into the Roman period and they start to become more established in Britain, they start to bring over some of their pottery designs. So we've got a few examples here ranging from black burnished ware, Samian ware, and what we call grey ware. And if you compare it to some of the Anglo-Saxon stuff, you can see that it's a lot more refined. It's thinner, it's more well made, there are less or almost no inclusions in the side that are visible to the naked eye. And you can see the sort of the way the technology and the skills have been refined and adapted.
Yeah, should we just compare these two edges? So we'll take this, your favourite bit, this large bit of cooking ware.
So you can see when they're placed side by side that the later, this particular black burnished ware example is significantly thinner. It's just generally nicer to sort of hold. It's lighter. It's more well structured. It looks more like a nice pot. Whereas this, if you compare it to sort of say perhaps something you might find in the garden centre, it's almost like one of those larger plant pots that you might find. There's less refinement and less time and effort gone into producing that in comparison to this.
But they've all ended up in the rubbish pit, so why is that?
It could be a variety of reasons. They could break, and at which point you just discard them. This particular example, the Samian ware, it's got these decorated figures on the side of it. Even in comparison to the black burnished ware, this would take a lot longer to produce. So it's very, very likely that this would be more of a prized possession than something that you would perhaps just instinctively throw away at the end of its sort of life. So the fact that we have it in a rubbish pit would suggest that at some point it's been broken. So it's got to the point where it can't be repaired or reused and has been thrown away into the midden pit. I actually find the grey ware to be quite an interesting example. A little bit nicely made, but it's so common, you can almost imagine it being sort of the equivalent of almost like a Roman Tupperware container. So you would perhaps go to watch a chariot race, get a bowl of soup, eat your soup, and then at the end of it, it doesn't have perhaps as much value as some of these other examples. So that one you might instinctively throw away rather than keep and reuse.
Okay, and do you have any examples over there of them maybe reusing things that they've broken?
We definitely do, yeah. So these are
tesserae.
These are tesserae, yes. So these are sort of part of what you would see on the sort of mosaic floors that you get really, really famous during the Roman period. And again, they're just sort of small, square-shaped, and obviously all together would be.
And what do you call them? Tesserae?
Tesserae, yeah.
And what's that in layman's terms?
Basically miniature tile, really, isn't it?
Little squares.
Little squares. And obviously you can form patterns and shapes by laying many of them on the floor.
So these are for mosaics. They're quite big for mosaics.
Yeah, so the size and the smallness would all be used to help convey perhaps more intricate images, or maybe you've got a border on the outside. So from these tesserae, we can look at the complexity of them to give an indication of the status and value potentially of that household. The interesting thing about the one that you're holding there, so that white stuff on it, that's part of the mortar that would have held it in place.
Oh, so that would give that lovely orange surface.
Answer to your question about reuse though, we have this example of essentially Roman concrete. And what we know from looking at this is that it actually has ground-up examples of tesserae in it. So at some point, perhaps during a redecoration of a Roman villa or whatever, they've taken up the existing tile, the mosaic floor, ground those pieces up and reused them to sort of perhaps lay the next floor.
Oh, so just as I go to IKEA to buy a new rug when I'm bored of my old one, they would kind of
they've taken up the rug and they've churned it out.
And they've turned it into something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. I love you those that.
Huge amount of reuse. We can definitely see as we move from Iron Age cultures into Romano-British cultures, there is a change of kind of throwaway and recycling. If we imagine a Iron Age settlement, we might be, I don't know, in the middle of the Midlands. We've got perhaps 1 or 2 roundhouses. We've got perhaps, I don't know, a few pigs, a few sheep, a few cows if we're lucky. Might have some dogs as well to help us keep them in place. We are really self-sufficient and we are self-sustaining on that bit of land, that little small farming enclosure. It's up to us to make sure that the crops go right for harvest, that we've got enough animals, and if something breaks, there's no one really I can turn to fix it. My neighbour in the next roundhouse might be able to help me, but if it's broken, it's really up to me to try and sort that out. And this really starts to make us think about how these people lived, what they were doing day to day, what their beliefs were, what they ate, what they did, what their kind of connections were with the nearest tribe, and we can start to piece together those things even from their rubbish.
Gluten-free.
No.
All the girls down in the settlements are doing it.
No, because then the goats will have to die.
Why would the goats have to die? We could go vegan as well.
That's not even something that exists at this point in time. Yes?
Are they, ladies? Now have I got something to show you?
I don't want to see anything from your Roman sack ever again. None of those contraptions.
Those bronze brooches you sold us last Beltane were more brass than copper.
But ladies, those were just imitation Roman. What I have here will change your way of life.
Who says our way of life needs changing?
Well, it's bound to happen, isn't it? What with the Romans staying here longer and longer, our in Castle Ring to
in
the...
Staffordshire.
Coombs Moss, St Pete's.
Aye, the very one. And what they're doing with that Roman stuff, it's amazing. They've even changed the way they make bowls. You drink your water out of these little cups, and they've got all these figures on them, acting out all aspects of daily life. In fact, they're even using these tiny, tiny stones to create these massive images on the floor.
What like?
Well, the one I saw were of a dog licking
Oh,
it.
gross. So what is it exactly you're selling this time?
If it's a way to make this flour grind quicker, I can't wait for it. I'll sell you our fattest goats.
Well, it'd be quicker if you broke these querns less often and less deliberately.
Well, I just feel like a woman's work is never done. When's that going to end?
Clearly, you're not reading the instructions properly.
What you've got to do is get down on your haunches and really put...
Before I feed you to the goats or into the bog, why don't you just show us what's in that sack of yours?
Tiles.
What?
Tiles.
What?
Tiles.
What?
Tiles.
Is that one of your new Roman words?
These are the latest in design and engineering from across the pond.
Looks like a plate.
It's not a plate, it's called a tegula. And what you do is you line them all up on your roof, and this part, the imbrex, sits along the top like that. And voila! Or hic est, as they say in Rome.
As you can see, our roof is fine.
No, in another 10 years or so, you'll have to rebuild this place. Have you thought about redecorating with lye and plaster? You could even get a heated floor.
Ooh, underfloor heating.
Yeah, and these tiles, they'll stop all that hot air from escaping through the roof.
Ooh, that sounds nice. Cosy even.
Yeah, well, this roof tile,
Tegula.
right, it's broken, isn't it? You're not going to be putting the wool over my eyes. We're not in some dark ages yet. Look at the edges here. They're abraded.
Which camp did you say you got it from?
I bet you've not even been to a Roman camp, have you? But you've been scutting about on the outskirts near Coombs Wood in the rubbish pits.
Oh, gross.
But it's not rubbish, is it? I thought we were all about recycling these days. Didn't you make a massive to-do the other month about burying your best bowl Broken, maybe, in the boundary ditch.
Well, that's different, isn't it? It's ritual.
And don't you lie to me. I know your great uncle's bones are buried in the southwest corner of this roundhouse.
Well, no, you put them there deliberately.
Well, how else is this house going to stay up through winter? Can't use concrete, can I?
Opus cementicum?
What you're selling and peddling is just rubbish. What's building material going to say about us, about our tribe, our people, our way of life, the battles we've fought, the fat goats that I've slaughtered to reap a good harvest for all of you coming here? No, it's not going to say anything about us, about who's buried in the corner of the house. What you're selling is just rubbish. You can't tell anything from that. Can you?
So now we've looked at the ceramics on the table, what other kind of things were they producing as rubbish at the time?
I mean, you get things like coprolites,
And what is that?
basically mineralised poo.
Right. And what can you tell from mineralised poo?
Well, you can actually do quite detailed analysis on them. You can sort of tell what they ate, as well as what sort of parasites they had in them. So, worms, you can see evidence of those. So that tells you not just about what they were eating, but sort of their general health as well.
Okay, have you got any examples?
Well, we don't have any examples of human poo, but we do have examples of their diet. So these three objects here, these are actually animal bone, and the reason why they're important is that they've got signs of butchery on them. So if this one here, you might have to pick out some of those lines there, and that is marks of butchery. And same for this one here as well, but you can see where it's been chopped in half. Now, this is probably one of the big changes that we sort of face as we move through the ages, is how we eat and consume food. So one of the things we find often in rubbish pits is perhaps charred wheat and grains. It's quite hard for us to find this just digging with a trowel, but we can actually take environmental samples. So that's basically taking the fill of that deposit, putting it in a special sterile bucket, taking it back to the labs. We use water to break down those hard soil components. If it's a clay site, we'll break that down, and then through quite a few looks under the microscope, we'll start to pick out these really important grains. So the finished product of an environmental sample, I think there's a good indications here. So we can see here all these little black bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much soil is this from?
So we take 40 litres of earth as a standard, and then we'll civil that down, and you'll see on the top that it says less than 2 millimetres. So using different size sieves, we'll basically take those samples or those flots down, and then from the size you can get an indication of what's kind of going on there. Environmental archaeology is really interesting because it is very much looking at those micro remains. So in this we have got some bits of charred bone. Now, I'm not an archaeologist, so I can't tell you whether or not they are human, but it's probably more likely that these are animal bone here in this one. We've got bits of charcoal as well coming through.
Wow.
And then let's see what's in your one. So
I think I can see some bone in this one too.
yes, we've got some charcoal and some bone there, so that would give an indication about what sort of deposit that was used for. And we've also got some seeds. So in those smaller tubes, we've got examples rather of, is that barley in that one? Can be quite
Emma?
hard. Oh yes, Emma, which is my name, but also a really good grain.
Is that a coincidence?
I wasn't named after a seed. So Emma is a type of wheat, and when we get examples of what was growing, it kind of feeds back into what that landscape was and how it actually looked. Programme selection, heritage, refine. Archaeology, refine. Archaeology of 2020 AD. Location, refine. Sheffield, South Yorkshire. Earth, past. Retail, note. Begin program. Greetings, future archaeologists, and welcome to the heritage sector. If you're joining us from Mars today, do be aware of the oxygen shortages in District 23. Make sure all life forms are evacuated before the purge at 2600 hours. You have selected the archaeology of the 21st century. I shall be your archaeological interface for the duration of this journey. So join me, your heritage hologram guide, as we take a deeper look at the rubbish of 2020 AD. Warning, this program will contain images of unrecycled waste. If you experience waste disposal uncertainty, please contact your local recycling initiative. Site history. Begin. The Shirecliff Household Waste Recycling Centre was recognised as having UNESCO Heritage status in the year 2220. The site offers the best example of waste management in the early 21st century. Since the Attenborough Legacy Act of 2413, the notion of refuse, waste or rubbish has been an alien concept to us, with over 97% of all materials made by humans being recycled through fuel, art or reuse. In the 21st century, their technology had yet to attain the organic hominin interface that we enjoy today. This meant that their technology was based on a class system in which the latest phones or smartphones were required to show social status. Would you like to know more? In-depth analysis. Recent research has led us to believe that humans began to deliberately break their brand new mobile technical devices as part of a ritualistic and engaging behaviour. These broken mobile devices were then deliberately placed in the waste deposit areas. Deep within the tip, some 45 metres down, we found numerous bottles of hand sanitizer. The hand sanitizer was used to sanitize the hands. Such dedication towards cleanliness of hands was seen as a strong measure against disease. Dedicated worship of the new Amazon gods ensured prime deliverance of all your worldly needs, delivered right to your door or safe place. The faithful were rewarded with consumable and recyclable devotions delivered straight to their doorstep. We know this due to the vast swathes of recyclable cardboard materials, the same materials which we now use to fertilise our crops and harvests. Recent excavations on the outskirts of the site have revealed a roundabout. This would be used during certain times in which a processional cavalcade would gather around the central island in a ritual called the rushed hour. As archaeologists, we can learn from the past and help shape our future. We can learn from the Shirecliff UNESCO Heritage Site that our waste has an impact on our environment, but we have the ability to change it through recycling, reuse and art.
Now I'd like you to think about your rubbish. What happens to it? Where does it go? Can you reduce your rubbish or reuse more of it? How can you reduce your grizzly bear's weight of rubbish for this year? I challenge you to think of new ways of turning your rubbish into something worthwhile keeping. Could you turn jam jars into plant pots, or could you turn plastic bottles into bird feeders? If you're feeling ambitious, you could try create your own work of art. You could use Sheffield Castle as an inspiration to create a sculpture out of cardboard boxes, or you could create a collage of your local landscape using bits and bobs you'd normally throw away. Check out Rubbish Art on social media for more inspiration, and then you can add your ideas and creations to the mix. We can't wait to see what you come up with, and remember to continue to reuse and recycle. Thanks everyone, goodbye.